welcome to the January Citizen Involvement Committee meeting. Hope you had a wonderful holidays.
Thank you.
That didn't sound very happy. All right, we will. Barbara, would you please do roll call?
Tony, you. Okay, Mark Matheson.
Here.
Jessica Smith.
Here.
Dennis Anderson.
Here.
Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Amy Wilhite.
Here.
Faith Lee.
Here.
Joyce Gifford.
Here.
Jesse Buss.
Here.
Cameron McCready.
He can't make it tonight.
Barbara Rinkin. Stephen Haverbeck.
Here.
Karen Morey.
Here.
There's Tony. Harris Gwynn. Bill McConnell is excused. Gary Fergus.
Here.
And Brian Boyce.
Here.
All right, thank you. First up, we have Scott Archer here to do a presentation about community services, updating on his department. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I feel like it's in the theater of the round here. So I don't
the audience is
if I could stand up or if this could spin around or something. I'll try not to have you talking, looking at my back too much, but not going to promise making great eye contact for this one. Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Scott Archer. I'm the city's Community Services Department Director, and I was asked to just come and give you a brief update on what's going on in community services, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what community services means if you don't know. And then, of course, just be available to answer any questions if you have those, or basically just wanted to kind of give you a quick sort of synopsis and rundown. The Oregon City Community Services Department is responsible for a pretty wide variety of city functions and services, including parks, recreation, Mountain View Cemetery, and facilities. Facilities meaning the ones that we operate, like the pool and the Pioneer Center, but also we're in charge of facilities maintenance for the city, so kind of some behind-the-scenes stuff. The mission of our department is to contribute significantly to the quality of life in Oregon City for our residents and our visitors. We have a department motto, which is, we build community through people, parks, and programs. And so that's kind of what we tend to do for the city. And what that means, I'm going to just give you, what I'd like to do is just give you a quick snapshot of the department, tell you a little bit more about the functions of what we do to make sure that everybody's aware of that, and then an update on some of the activities that we've been involved with over the last year and some of the things that we're going to be doing going forward this year. And then again, I'll leave some time for you to answer or ask me any questions, and hopefully I'll have answers to those questions. First of all, Oregon City Community Services Department, sort of here's what we are. And this is just a quick snapshot, and there's a lot more to it, but these are sort of the big picture things. First of all, this one always, I think, when I talk to groups or boards or committees, this one tends to surprise people, but we have 37 parks in Oregon City. In addition to those parks, we have a number of other kind of miscellaneous open spaces, natural areas, little strips of property somewhere here or there that John and I kind of arm wrestle about who takes care of that, but we have a number of other properties, but 37 parks in the city. This includes everything from our largest park of Clackamat, which is 25 acres, to our smallest park, which is Richard Bloom Tots Park, diagonal from the library, which is about 1/5 of an acre. So everything everything in between. This was just a snapshot of those community parks, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with from your neighborhoods, like Chapin, Hillendale, Wesley Lynn parks. Those are kind of the community-sized parks. To smaller neighborhood parks like Barkley Hills, Kanema Children's, and some others. And then we have nature parks like Singer Creek and Waterboard parks. We have trails, for example, the Clackamas River Trail, which is kind of around the Cove area. Willamette River Trail, which is the trail that connects between Clackamat and John Storm Park, and actually now kind of continues south along along the 99E improvements that have been made in the last few years. We have other things within our parks that are kind of popular amenities, such as the two spray parks that we have. One over here at the library, which is going to be rebuilt and will be operating after that project is done, and then one up at Rivercrest Park. Very popular spots in the summer. And then we have the skate park at Clackamet, which still continues to be a very popular amenity. We have two boat launch sites, one of which is closed, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit in part of my update. And then just a number of other kind of typical parks amenities. So that's sort of kind of the range of things that we have. In terms of acreage for the city, we have developed parks. We have about 250 acres of property that we take care of, we being my department, and then just sort of what we call open space, which would be non-developed properties. We have about a little over 280 acres, which is a total. Community Services Department manages a total of about 530 acres of property for the city. Within that, we have 55 acres of Mountain View Cemetery that we operate as a department. We do two things there. We manage the grounds. We take care of the property itself, and that includes, of course, our historic Pioneer Cemetery, which is a very neat place. If you've never just kind of taken a stroll through there, that sort of tells you the story of the history of our city. If you look at that, and then of course we manage an ongoing cemetery operation. So it's a busy place. We do burials, cremation, burials, scattering gardens, and all types of things. So a busy. It's both a historic Pioneer Cemetery, but it's also a fully functional operating cemetery. We operate the Pioneer Adult Community Center just across the street over here. This is a very busy and a very important facility for our city, focused on services and programming for older adults mostly, but it's also just a general community center that's used for other functions. The older adults program tend to focus on classes, programs, activities. We have our meals program, Meals on Wheels, transportation for folks that can't get out to doctor's appointments or the grocery store or things like that, and lots of other things. It's a very, very busy center and provides critical services to folks in the older adult population. We have the Oregon City Swimming Pool. Pool was opened in 1965. It's an old pool building, but it is a very vibrant facility. We do everything from swim lessons to recreation swimming, fitness and lap swimming, water exercise classes. We do lifeguard trainings. We have 3 competitive swim teams, 2 high schools and 1 private team that use our facility as its home base. We do things in the community room, rentals for birthday parties, community events, meetings, and things like this. This past year, and has been the kind of the trend in the last several years, we continue to sort of break our own attendance records. The last year that we have, which is actually 2014, we don't have all of our 2015 information updated yet, but we had over 112,000 visits at the swimming pool. So that's pretty significant and a busy place. Community Services operates the Ermatinger House. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the project that was just finished, but just in terms of we sort of own, manage, and operate the house. The Ermatinger House is believed to be the second oldest standing house in the state of Oregon, so it's very significant. There's a restoration project completed last year, and I'll talk just a little bit more about that in sort of my updates. We operate the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. Yes, the center is open. It was closed for a couple of years, as you probably know, working in the city, working with the Clackamas Heritage Partners, a private nonprofit group. We reopened the facility for public use in 2013, and it's continued to do well and to grow and expand in what we're doing there. So that's actually going quite well. Our department does a number of programs and special events. We have camps, programs, swim lessons, sports camps in the summer, concerts in the park, which has become wildly popular since we've moved it down to the end of the Oregon Trail site. We do movies in the park up at Wesley Lynn Park, which are also quite popular. And then we just do things that you may or may not have heard of. We have this incredible, and the cuteness factor is about as big as you can get. The daddy-daughter dinner dance we do every year in either late January or early February, where dads get to take their kind of grade school age daughters, and it's at the Abernathy Center, and it's extremely cute and fun, and we sell out every year, and we have people begging and pleading and crying to get in, and we've maxed out that program. But so we do a lot of those types of things. My department's also involved. We're responsible for planning for future capacity, so any expansion of either existing parks or planning for new parks, we do all that. And again, I'm going to talk about some projects that we've got going on. One of the sort of things that we continue to contend with, and so within the department is our parks maintenance. So we do all those things that I just talked about, the facilities, the grounds, et cetera, are under the community services department. We do maintenance. And that's one of the biggest issues that we are kind of continually contending with how to deal with, and that is deferred maintenance. So Oregon City, as we all know, we're the oldest city in the West. We also have some of the oldest facilities, infrastructure, parks really in the region, and with that comes a lot of aged infrastructure, things that were built many decades ago, things that are underground that you may not even see, pipes, irrigation lines, sidewalks, old restroom facilities, and just on and on. And as a city, we've done a pretty good job of kind of masking the problem, but what happens is sort of a lot of that goes unseen, and sort of behind the scenes we're constantly behind and playing catch up. So we've got a lot of deferred maintenance. We're probably we estimate, and it's a pretty rough estimate, but probably in the $1.5 to $2 million deferred maintenance, which means those are things that we haven't addressed and haven't gotten to, and we're trying to figure out ways to keep up and to deal with those things. And we do continue to discuss this with our city commission, with our Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, and other citizens groups like yourselves, just to let you know that that's something that's out there, and we're looking at potential funding solutions and options for that, but we're going to continue to work on those things. So that's just sort of a snapshot of the department. What I'd like to do also is just give you kind of a quick summary of department activities and things that have been going on, sort of big picture updates. So first of all, and these are in no particular order, but just kind of running through some things. As I had mentioned previously, after several years of planning and developing towards a preservation plan, I'm really pleased to announce that the Ermentinger House renovation project is complete. We have restored, renovated, protected the house. It was essentially literally falling in on itself, and it was in basically a really extreme danger of sort of having self-demolition, if you will, if we didn't do something about it. And so we worked on a plan with our city commission for the last few years, and we put the funding plan into place, and then over the last year we completed the renovation. It was a really intricate preservation project, and because it had to be done to basically to the standards of historic preservation, which are pretty specific and intense. And so we've done that, and now that it's completed, the big question is, what are we going to do with the house? And that's something that we're continuing to work on determining. We had a programming study done this last year, and that was presented to our commission, and we're still kind of talking about going forward. So the programming and the use is still something that's going to be determined here in the coming probably several months, and we do anticipate reopening the house in some form to the public in 2016. What that looks like, we're still is to be determined. So, this last year we completed master plans on 2 undeveloped future park sites, and those are known as Glen Oak Park, which is near the high school, and Filbert Run Park, which is off of Central Point Road. I put some handouts. If most of you probably got those. If you didn't, they're on the back counter with some a design on one side and then sort of just an aerial map location if you're not familiar with where those are at. So we completed the master plans this last year. What those are basically is it gives us a vision for what the park site is going to look like when we develop those. That was done with a tremendous amount of public input. We went directly to the neighborhoods where those parks are located. We reached out to the community. We had very good community participation, and essentially the community and the neighbors helped us design those parks. So we've completed the master plans. However, we are still in the process of determining a timeline for the eventual construction of these two new parks, and those that's something that we're going to continue to work through. Kind of a new thing for us this last year, with actually the I think the prodding, the very good advocating from our Parks and Rec Committee, we've been working on some kind of a solution for a dog park for our community. And we've yet to come up with a permanent dog park solution, but what we did was sort of an interim plan. And what that plan is that we created 3 new off-leash dog areas within existing parks. They're not fenced areas, they're just areas that we've said these are areas that we feel are not terribly impactful to have an off-leash dog area. And there are still rules, and you still have to maintain control of your dog, and you have to clean up and those types of things, and we've posted those rules. But these give folks an opportunity sort of as an interim solution. We are doing this as a 1-year pilot project. It just started a little over a month ago, so we've just got very preliminary information on how that's going. I think when the better weather starts to come in the spring, we'll really see how that's going to work. But those parks, by the way, are Wesley Lynn, and that's kind of in what we call the back area of the park, not in the main developed area. Barkley Park, not Barkley Hills, but Barkley Park, the one that is on 12th, just over here, in kind of right down the hill from the Barkley School, and then Park Place Park. So we intentionally, with the Parks Committee, found 3 strategically mapped out locations that give us some placement in some different regions of the city, so you can kind of see that with those park locations. So we will see how that program goes, and we'll be kind of checking back on that. And again, our goal is to find a solution to develop a permanent fenced dog park at some point in the future. Another thing that we did this last year, we completed a new permanent stage structure down at the end of the Oregon Trail site. This was done in conjunction with the Oregon City High School construction program, which we've been very successful in partnering with them. It's a great kind of a two-way benefit. They benefit by having the ability to give their kids a place to do their projects. We benefit because we get projects done that we may or may not have otherwise been able to afford to do, and it's been a wonderful thing. So that new stage was built. It was well utilized in its first season this past summer with the concerts in the park. One of the concerts, we think we had over 5,000 people. It was almost too big, but we've had just incredible attendance at those, so it's been quite popular. The pool and the Pioneer Center I mentioned a little bit. Again, very busy facilities, both of those, high participation numbers, the highest at least in the time that I've been with the city for a little over 11 years, and the numbers are at their highest point since I've been here in terms of programs and offerings, but also the amount of people that attend and participate. We continue to, as we're able to with the limited resources that we have, but we've been able to make some upgrades and improvements to both of those facilities. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to visit those at some point, and you've noticed sort of some changes over the last several years that we've been kind of bringing them along and trying to refurbish those and continue to maintain and keep these functional for our community. As I've said, they're both very well utilized. One thing to look for in the coming year, in this year, at the pool, we are going to be installing new ADA and family changing rooms, which are something that have been greatly needed for a long time, something that you see at a lot of modern aquatic facilities, and we're going to be kind of basically redoing some of the space that we have, and that'll be coming soon, so we're really excited about that. Clackamet Park, a couple things going on there. First, I want to mention that if you weren't aware, the RV park is closed for the winter. It'll be reopened in the spring. And then bigger thing there, I touched on this just a little bit. The Clackamet Park boat ramp has been closed for quite a while now. It's for an extended period of time. It was closed due to structural and safety issues that were caused by the river channel, the Clackamas River. We have been fortunate to have great partners in the Oregon State Marine Board, and they've helped us in funding a study that we did this past year. It's a hydrology study of the river in the channel near where the boat ramp is located. And this study, which is just being wrapped up, and we'll have recommendations as to how to do two things. One, probably temporarily reopen the existing ramp at the site that it's at, so that we at least can offer that. Even though we have two boat ramps, we have the other one is at Sportcraft Landing, just down the Willamette River. Even though it seems that those are two fairly adjacent boating facilities, you would be surprised at how much of a demand there still is just to have the Clackamet boat ramp opened as well. And so a lot of folks are looking forward to that happening. So the recommendations in this study that we've done are going to give us the options of doing a temporary repair, hopefully being able to reopen that on the short term, and then a long-term solution to probably having to rebuild that and move it. I think we're going to be looking at moving it just downriver in the park, so closer to the Willamette, and doing some things with how it's angled and where the river flows will hit it, so that we don't have the same problem again. That will be probably a relatively expensive solution, and we'll have to kind of figure that one out. But like I said, we're trying to get that ramp reopened where it's at, but we have to do some things based on this study. For those of you in the Barkley Hills neighborhood, your neighborhood park there, the Barkley Hills neighborhood park, we're replacing the playground. We're in the process of doing that right now. That's long overdue, and in fact, we've had to sort of dismantle parts of the playground for safety reasons. But we are fully replacing that playground this year. It'll be done by the spring. And again, working with the high school construction program on that project, they're going to do a lot of the install for us. They've done some fundraising. We're doing some other kind of ancillary improvements around the playground that are going to make the park a lot nicer even than it is. And we anticipate that being done by this spring. And then lastly, kind of a fun little footnote here, a new program that we started, and everybody's been talking about pickleball in Oregon City. If you haven't heard that yet, we have. It's a really cool story. It's a great sort of grassroots effort story to get a program started and have something be as successful as it has. There's a sport called pickleball. If you're not familiar with it, Google it. There's a lot of information about it, but it's basically kind of a combination of tennis and ping pong, standing on top of the ping pong table. But it's an incredibly popular sport. It's growing in popularity. It's good for all ages. There are a lot of older adults that play this because you don't have to move quite as much as you do playing tennis. It's not as strenuous, but it's a great activity. And so this group came to us. They came to our Parks and Rec committee, and they said, hey, we'd like to start this kind of pilot project with you. Would you let us have some space at one of your facilities? So we started, after a number of discussions, we figured out that Hillendale Park was a good location. We have some tennis courts there that are not very well utilized. And these folks came in, volunteer group, and they said, let us just have the space and we'll do the work. We'll put the lines in, we'll put the equipment in, we'll promote it, kind of help us talk about it. Anyway, lo and behold, they meet several times a week. They even play during the winter. I don't know if they're there this week or not, but they've been there in the wind and the rain and the cold. It started in the summer, and the numbers were booming in the summer, and I think they've dipped just a little bit. But this is continuing to grow. They've actually already kind of exceeded their capacity, and they're looking at maybe expanding that. So kind of just a fun little story about how we work with community organizations that come to us and say, well, don't forget about us, or what about this sport? You know, we do all the traditional things, and so pickleball, it's a big deal, believe it or not. We also, I guess the kind of the final thing, there's a Parks and Rec Advisory Committee 2015-16 goals sheet in that packet of info that I provided for you. So Community Services Department provides staffing support to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. Those folks meet here once a month in this room, and it's a 9-person committee. They advise the City Commission and staff on matters related to parks and recreation activities, projects, policies, etc. It's a really active committee. It's a good group, and it's important to just kind of put that into my discussion because we work closely with those folks. And again, I won't go through this, but I put into your packets the 2015-16 goals that they've adopted to work on in this kind of 2-year budget cycle. And you'll see that a lot of the things that I've talked about kind of mesh up with those things that are the goals. These folks also are careful to talk about in their goal setting. You'll notice a lot of their things are related to things that are in the City Commission's goals, and they also talk about being knowledgeable and informed about other boards, such as yourself, other boards and committees, and the goings on of the city. So they've tried to make some efforts to, ask questions or to reach out about how do we make sure that we're sort of aware of what other folks are doing. So that's part of my job, is to keep them updated on that. So again, that was just a really kind of a high-level snapshot. Not everything that's going on. There are a lot of day-to-day activities that we do that I wouldn't take the time to go through, but that's sort of the big picture update of what Community Services Department is up to. And I would just be available to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for
Jessica? Thanks for being here. Looking at the bottom of your Parks and Rec Advisory Committee goals, it says begin discussions on the possible need for no smoking in parks policy changes. Is there already a policy, or would that be a new policy?
That would be, if that goes forward, that would be new. That's something that some of the committee members have begun to advocate for and talk about, and so we'll see if that, what transpires. But that would be new. There's not an existing policy.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions for Scott? Thank you. That was very informative.
Good. Thank you.
That's great.
Appreciate all that you do for the city, and if there ever are any questions about any of that stuff, feel free to give me a holler. Thanks so much, and please don't be offended, but I'm going to leave your meeting now because I have another commitment this evening. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Next on the agenda was the historic resources, and Christina was unable to make it tonight due to the weather, so we will move that to another time. And we are hoping that Clackamas Fire is able to attend, but if not, when they get here, we'll invite them up. But otherwise, we will move on to Public Works. John.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Dun, dun, dun.
I didn't know Christina didn't make it. The roads are perfect in Oregon City. What the heck?
I know. Thank you, John.
So I just had a couple items I wanted to talk about tonight. One was inclement weather, because it seems the season is upon us for updating folks on kind of how we respond to inclement weather. And the other was I wanted to give you an update on what's kind of been called the Oregon City landslide, and just some of the work activities that have been going on with that. And that's been consuming Oregon City Public Works and other parts of the city a lot. So between these two items. So it's been a pretty active storm. December was a pretty active storm month, and January, I guess, is kind of showing the similar signs of active weather. So one thing I just wanted to point out to you is we do have an inclement weather webpage. It's got a lot of information in it, so I recommend you take a look at it. One of the things that I think is important is to know, a lot of people ask a lot about de-icer and sand. Why don't we throw out more sand on the road? And so we try not to use a lot of sand, because sand just gets things dirty, and lots of times it's not very effective with snow and ice in Oregon City. So we've got a lot of steep hills. Sometimes we need to put it out, and when we do it in a pretty limited basis. Usually we try to spray it down with de-icer so it kind of settles into the ice a little bit better. But usually when it gets really icy around, like it was last night, that ice or that sand, we throw it down and the cars just kind of rolls off like marbles. So de-icer is our most effective tool, and we use it pretty regularly. We try to get it down before the ice forms on the roadway. So one of the problems we run into is if rain is predicted before it's going to get icy, we typically won't apply de-icer just because it just washes away and then it freezes. And so our approach to that is then, as it's freezing, try to apply it. So oftentimes we'll be out there at night and applying de-icer at the most appropriate time. This particular event, it was pretty dry before it got icy, so we were able to get out there and apply de-icer, just like ODOT and the county and a lot of other agencies did. So I think we did a pretty good job in Oregon City. I don't think we got hit as hard as Portland with the ice. I was in Portland last night, and it was really icy. And as you moved south, it seemed better. So I think we fared pretty well with that. But the other thing that I wanted to point out on this website that you can get to if you choose to is we have we have a winter weather response plan, which I'm not going to go into, but if you're interested in the details about what de-icer is and how much we apply and when we stock it, it's more of an internal document, but we've posted it for your use. Probably need some updates. I noticed it's dated 2013, so we always like to tweak those plans and make sure they're most applicable to how we really operate. But really what I thought would be good for you folks to know is we don't hit every street. That's the other thing that we don't do. We pick priority routes, and usually we share. We've got some maps even better than these that we share with our crew. So, everything in red is considered a priority route, so we're more likely to put de-icer. Or I guess the other thing I'll mention is if we have enough snow accumulation, we would plow our roads as well. So we would use these same maps. And so we prioritized in priority 1, 2, and 3. There's a lot of streets, as you can tell, aren't prioritized, and that's because more likely than not, we're not going to be plowing those or putting de-icer on those. So those exist. I think it's important for you to know. We try to get into them. Whether we had enough time to get to every street that's shown in color on this map as of yesterday, I don't know. But again, just know that the crew chooses these priorities when we maintain our streets for inclement weather. I guess one other thing I'll say about plowing is a little bit of snow, not very good for the plows. They're not necessarily like windshield wipers. They don't have a nice squeegee they're a pretty rigid rubber foot that sits on the snow plow. So really, even a couple inches isn't very easy to move with the snow plow. It's much more, especially with streets like Oregon City with all these weird angles and ups and downs. Snow plows have proven to be pretty difficult to use in Oregon City. We have them, and we have used them in certain conditions, but we much prefer rain over snow. So in Oregon City. So that was that winter weather update. Any questions before I move
Just-
on to the next one?
I noticed again with yesterday's event, if your trucks want to turn around, they can do it in my parking lot and just accidentally spray a little on the way.
Right. You happy with that one?
Lynn Avenue was beautiful, just couldn't get out of the parking lot.
Yeah. We get in trouble when we do that.
Just a turnaround, it's okay.
So this has been probably the news story for Oregon City for the last few days. We had our closing incident response briefing today, because for the most part, other than ongoing observation of the site and maybe some help with Clackamas County Social Services, we've kind of wound down our incident command system. So the city, so this is regarding the landslide at Forest Edge Apartments and Berry Hill Apartments. And I want to say it was the 19th, we got the call that things were moving a little bit more on that site than we'd like to. Well, we don't want to see any movement there, but we've historically known this site to be slide active from time to time. And this year, with all the wet weather, it's definitely become very active. And so December 19th, we took a call that we had significant slide activity there. City did a pretty thorough evaluation of the buildings, and within a couple days there we decided we were going to have to evacuate a couple of buildings. And this map is, I've got it shown here in a little better. Maybe not. I had that up there. Just thought I would show. I'll go ahead and leave this one. It's got a lot more information on it than I wanted, though. So that's that same map, only on a little larger scale. So those of you that are familiar with the Berry Hill Apartments, these are the two buildings. There's an 8-plex and a duplex that were at the top of the landslide, or at the top of the scarp. This red line here kind of represents that scarp. And that scarp is encroached very close to those two buildings. So they were the first two buildings that received the evacuation order. I want to say that was on the 21st or the 22nd. And so 10 families or 10 different units were displaced at that time. And at the same time, the Red Cross opened a shelter at the Oregon City High School. And it wasn't much longer. A couple days later, we had to make further determination that these, well, it wasn't a determination. It was that they didn't have water and sewer service any longer because the roadway between the upper and the lower apartments had slid far enough that we were having problems serving them. So that was enough, combined with a lot of building problems we're seeing in those buildings that are just building and driveway accessibility issues, that we, there was 42 units, 41 families in these 4 buildings here. So it's a total of 51 families that were displaced. And so we put a lot of energy into sharing that information, going door to door, trying to give them a little bit of time to get out of there. They had a little bit more time than we had at the Berry Hill Apartments, but all of those folks were displaced to go to other places, whether it be family, friends, or the Red Cross shelter. And that, so we saw a variety. I think the biggest number I remember was like 24 at the Red Cross shelter one night, but kind of hovered around 16 family members at the shelter. And quite a learning experience for us. We hadn't done an evacuation that I recall in the 12 years I've been here, and having not that kind of an evacuation. I guess we maybe had a couple of evacuations, but that one was a little different. Red Cross shelter. The Red Cross has responded before, but never actually activated a shelter that's then been used. So the Red Cross, by the way, did an outstanding job. I think they got the call, and in 3 hours they were there, and they were set up with like 50 cots, and they had local and out-of-state representation on site really pretty quickly. So, and they continued to provide social services and food and all the kinds of things that you would expect a shelter to have. They had there, and that stayed in effect until this Sunday night. Then, so at the end of the day, 51 families, many of which found other housing through the Housing Authority. It was kind of an interesting exercise in working with the Clackamas County Social Services Housing Authority. I mean, the response was not only multi-agency, it was all our departments were there at the table, and during the Christmas holiday season with people on vacations, it kind of stretched the resources there a little bit. And part of me was feeling like that. What a terrible! It is a terrible time to. I mean, it's terrible to evacuate folks at any time, but during that time in particular, the good news about that was the school had a vacancy in their gym because they weren't in session, and so that was part of the reason why the Red Cross had to close up shop on Sunday, was because school had to be back in session. But definitely an eye opener with regard to this is still a relatively small site. Imagine something much bigger, a bigger event would be a challenge for our community, both at the county level and the city level. So at this point, we've made provisions for like 5 families that still needed some housing. The others have, are either working with their case workers or folks that help find additional housing. But we've made really some good progress there, and we hope in the next 3 weeks we'll have found different options. Those families will have found different options for living. This is a permanent closure of buildings B and A on the Berry Hill Park site, and 8, 9, 10, and 11 on the Forest Edge apartment site as well. And we're continuing to monitor the site. There are a couple other buildings that we're continuing to watch, and probably will. We know that the landslide's just going to continue to move as it has for the last several years. So keeping an eye on other buildings should, it's definitely in our work plan. So I think that was a quick overview. It definitely had good representation from leadership to, folks in the field. So, Brian?
So, one thing, the director of that Red Cross shelter, she goes to all these disasters and stuff, and she just wanted to make sure that she told us that she could not believe the response, even though John would say this is our first time at this. She was really impressed. She's just never seen a city respond as well as this city did to that issue, that project. So that's pretty good. It's an unfortunate thing, but we did respond. So
we had all hands on deck. I guess the other thing I should mention is there's been a couple of things that we learned in this response. First of all, the local faith-based organizations have an emergency relief fund, and it's managed through those faith-based organizations, and they had it in place, and it was a mechanism by which we used to help fill some of the after-shelter housing. So we were able to work through them and with them to make sure that happened. So they call it OSERF, Oregon City Emergency Relief Fund. And so if your church or if you're affiliated with that, I think that's another one of those outstanding programs that we didn't know existed. Police department use it from time to time if they have some kind of an incident that somebody needs housing. But I thought that was great, and they were really easy to work with and helpful. And then as a part of this event, and something that's still active, actually both programs are still active, but the city, in conjunction with the Oregon City Rotary Club, has established a Oregon City Landslide Relief Fund. So Oregon City Emergency Relief Fund, that's OSERF, and that's through faith-based organizations. And then the Oregon City Landslide Relief Fund, that's through the Rotary Club. And there's an account set up at Oregon City Lewis and Clark Bank. And you can also get to our website. Donations, I think, happen through the bank. I think there is a link through our website to help make donations as well. But that fund has been established to help some of these families with some of their moving expenses. So, we're taking applications from them, and I think the Rotary and the Rotary Board are making decisions on how to allocate those funds that have been collected. So both, really good efforts on the community's part to help with some of these displaced residents.
Is there any excuse me? Is there any plan to go in and try to stop further sliding, because that looks like it's kind of moving up the hill? And I know several years ago they had problems at the lower level at that point too. Is there any way to go in and help to do anything to stop or to help prevent that slide from continuing on and on?
So, the geotechnical engineers that I've talked to say anything's possible, but it's a significant and it's a deep-seated slide. So that to me means very expensive. And I think the Berry Hill apartment owners are looking at solutions that might help preserve some of the buildings, probably not so much the two buildings that have been vacated, but some of their other buildings. And, remains to be seen whether that solution will develop, but I think they're looking pretty hard at that. And typically,
So is it the responsibility of the owners there?
That's correct. Yeah, it's all on private property.
So because they got permits and stuff, is the city obligated to go in and say, hey, you really need to fix this? Because they issued permits for those buildings.
Yeah.
So is there any, does it,
Not obligated to fix it. I don't know that we can
not to
obligate
fix
them
it, but because you got people living there, and then to avoid, what we just went through, is there any plan to say, hey, we need to fix this so this doesn't happen again, or get those people out of there and take care of the problem, get rid of the house or whatever they need to do, so we don't run into that type of an emergency again?
Right. I think
Because it's going to come,
I think
evidently.
Yeah, I think the plan will be ongoing observation of that site, and maybe part of the problem is when is the appropriate time to say this building's unsafe, and really that's the designation that we had for the 6 buildings that is unsafe buildings, and so until that building gets into that kind of a situation, it's the building official isn't going to make that designation. Hopefully there's more heightened awareness, although, losing the 2 buildings down below, we still had a property owner who felt like he wanted to, fill that housing.
Just
And,
gonna say, what
I
happened to
think we're
6 and
always
7?
going to have property owners that are going to look to maximize the value of their property.
So do they have to tell a renter that, hey, we evacuated this building a while back, that
I guess I
seems
don't.
safe now?
Yeah, I guess I don't know that.
Yeah.
You said these were permanent closures.
The
though.
lower complex
The lowers
is
are permanent.
right?
Yeah, the lower
Okay.
apartments are permanent. But you're talking about the buildings that are still remaining and standing today.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and are they going to refill the ones that, were they totally permanently condemned?
I don't know.
The 2
that-
in Berry Hill?
The 2 in Berry Hill they're considered dangerous buildings.
Yeah.
And, it's up to the property owner to present something that might make them not dangerous. We would look to
So
that-
do they have to get permission from the city to redo that?
Yes,
To
they would.
reoccupy?
Yes, they
Okay.
would. Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. But the other buildings, it's, unless
They're toast.
there's something about property owners' rights, in the sale of a property, you need to disclose some things. Renters, I'm not sure that same disclosure exists. So,
That's scary.
You have to get start from the geotech guy to say that the buildings are good to go for at least for a while.
if they wanted to occupy buildings A and B, then there's really some pretty tough questions and pretty challenging answers to provide before the city would ever consider designating them anything other than dangerous buildings.
Because the pictures that you see, it's right there, right?
As a prospective renter, I think John, I'm curious though. Forest Edge has been part of the conversation for years and has been an issue. The Berry Hill surprised me. Is that a new slide, or is that part of what's been going on and we just hadn't heard about the townhouses before?
It's the top of the same ancient landslide. So it's always been a place that we've been monitoring and watching, but we hadn't seen some of the. We're seeing kind of hairline cracking in some of the stem walls of the foundations of those 2 buildings, and that's where they lost their decks a couple years ago. So they had they've been dealing with this slowly but surely, but the buildings essentially seemed to us and to their geotechs safe, but that condition can change, and it did.
And the other question, having been sitting in the hot tub at Nelson's the other day, is this the only part of the canyon that's active right now?
Right. That's the only part of the canyon that we know of that's active right now. We've seen other areas around Newell Canyon, Berkeley Hills, where we've seen slide activity. But yeah, this is the only one that we're watching as of January 4th, 2016. That
Okay.
could change tomorrow. But yeah. So
John,
Jesse, did you have a question? Or?
Oh, yes, thanks. Sorry. I was actually curious about the owners. Are they local owners, and how involved have they been in the relocation effort for the tenants?
They have been helpful in the sense that they're letting people in and out to move, giving them access, working with us to kind of help ensure that we can get on site to evaluate the site, those kind of things. But Forest Edge, for instance, they're getting to the point now that where everybody's out, everybody has their stuff out, and now they're trying to secure that just to keep folks that shouldn't be down there out of there. Berry Hill, I mean, both property owners have been, to the degree they can be, helpful. I think the Forest Edge apartment owner, there's a partnership there, and I'm not quite sure how that works, but one of the main owners is out of state. The other one is right here in town and been pretty active. Berry Hill, I think that one's in a land transaction. I think they're in state, but they're not necessarily in Oregon City. But they've got a property manager who's been pretty communicative with the city.
Thanks.
Well, they did reimburse their December rent and deposits,
Oh,
I believe,
wow.
didn't they, John?
That's right. So all the
Yeah.
all the residents, all 51 of them, we understand got their deposits, and they prorated their
rent.
I think Forest Edge prorated. The other one told us that they gave them half the month's rent, and we several tenants confirmed that. So
I noticed that buildings 6 and 7 are missing. Did they used to have a 6 and 7
Yes.
down at Forest Edge?
yeah, those were down by those two red lines
Yeah,
downtown.
10 years ago, they dropped,
Went away.
I forget how many feet, 10 or 15 feet, below the parking lot,
Oh, okay.
on a block without breaking up.
Those were also vacated, although that didn't happen in. I think that was much more controlled. They saw it coming, and I think we gave that building owner that designation, but it wasn't as, the buildings B and A were, we are kind of, we wouldn't want to see a catastrophic failure there, and so you definitely don't want to leave people in those buildings.
Buildings 4 and 5 in the Forest Edge look like that'd be.
So Building 5, that line's a little misleading. Building 5 is actually the one we're watching closest. It is kind of much closer to the edge. 4, not so much, but I see that the line reflects it that way. It's just a little inaccurate on the mapping there.
Okay.
So I have one more question. Do they have any, the current tenants that live, let's say, building 4 and 5, especially 4, do they have any recourse if they decide to move because they feel like it's unstable and they rather find something else sooner instead of wait till they get evacuated?
So again, the building owners have been helpful with that,
Yeah.
and they've told us that anybody that wants to move out of their facility, they'll give them they won't ask a lot of questions. Now whether that stays for a long period of time or that I don't know that, but during this event they were pretty open to people that wanted to move out of there, whether they were on the lower side or the upper side. That's it for me.
All right. Any other questions for John? All right. Thank you. All right. Item 3, public comments for items not on the agenda. I see we have a large audience out there. If anyone wants to make a comment on not on the agenda, now would be the time. All right. We'll move on to our work item. Laura, are you taking that?
I am. Thank you very much. All right. So there is a piece of paper that's in the back that talks about identifying and ranking work items and presentation topics for 2016. So now we've adopted our goals. One second. As you may know, when we set agendas for these meetings, I work with Amy and Karen and Barbara to do so and identify which items you would like to have on the agenda. So now we're starting 2016, so we would like to figure out what everybody would like to see. So as far as work items, and then also as far as presentation. So what are some stuff that you want to learn more about? So if we could take each item separately. First is the work items. So on the screen, I sent out an email and asked people to rank the items that they would like to work on and add any additional items that they could identify. And I received 6 responses, and this is what I found. I ranked them between the 6 responses. So the most important thing that people would wanted to work on was to create a public involvement plan to increase citizen or public participation. As you know, we had sent in a request to Portland State University Masters of Urban and Regional Planning group to help us create that plan. We have yet to hear back. We are supposed to hear back this month, so fingers crossed. It's a competitive process, but if we get it, then there would be a group of students who would come here and help us navigate through that process. Second is to identify the benefits of a neighborhood association and CIC. Associated with that, we had these Get Involved sheets that we had last year, and we updated them again this year. I have a stack of them here that I could pass around. And with that, we were trying to figure out, like, what description should we put on the front. We were working with Amy. We talked about it quite a bit at the Health and Safety Fair this year. There's also a description of neighborhood associations and CIC on the back. So really, how do we figure out the benefits and the values that neighborhood associations and the CIC provides, and how do we communicate that to the public? We've heard a lot of comments from neighborhood associations that attendance is only high when there's controversial land use, but we know that neighborhood associations and the CIC is so much more than that. So how can we communicate that to the public? Another top item was to develop a process to guide and activate inactive neighborhood associations. Unfortunately, we had the neighborhood associations that went inactive this year. So how do we put together a kit for the next person that picks up this interactive neighborhood association? What do they get, and how do they know where to start? And so if we could put something together for people to use, that would be helpful. The thing that was ranked last was develop resources to help maintain active neighborhood associations. So we want to make sure the ones that we have going stay active as well. Then you can see that there are a couple of other comments that were submitted. Develop more interaction between the CIC council and city staff. So we can kind of tease out what these mean. Create productive paths for localized ideas to empower neighborhood association members to be more active. Find better methods of using city resources to make community improvements. Again, we can kind of tease out what we mean by that as well. Participate in public events and spread the word. So which public events are we talking about? And how do we want to spread the word? And the last one I sort of just referred to is how do you get people to neighborhood association meetings, or how do you communicate the importance of these partnerships and knowledge that we're sharing. And then lastly, figure out who else we should be interacting with and do so. So is this ranking good, bad? Do we want to change things? It will help us figure out when we create our plan for how to set agendas, which items to work on first, second, and third. So ranked first is the tough one, and then there's some smaller items along the way. Comments?
I was not one of the ones that responded, and you know that, but now everyone knows that. So I'll give you my 2 cents now. I think the second tied for third and the fifth should be ranked second and third, respectively. Develop a process and guide to activate inactive neighborhood associations, and develop resources to help maintain active neighborhood associations. I think those are really subparts of creating a public involvement plan, which is number 1. And 2 and the first tie for number 3, I just don't see as critical in the list.
All right. You guys tell me how to number it, and that's what we'll do.
Okay, blank stares.
Okay, so Laura, I'm happy with the way it appears. The very last other,
Mm-hmm.
I think, actually combines with number 3. So both public
public
meetings
meetings.
and other groups and organizations.
Okay.
Yeah, we could combine those two.
Yeah.
I agree, Karen.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Number 4 is misnumbered, I think. So there's 1, 2, 3rd, and
They were
then-
tied. So I did
tied.
this ranking system. It's very complicated,
When only- well, it's
actually.
when,
And
you
then, so we had a tie.
So no 4.
Yeah, so there's 2, 3, so I skipped 4. I don't know.
Yeah.
How about make the first 3 4?
I could do that.
I have a
if we
question
want to
about
prioritize one over the other. Or
how do we, because,
move on.
so third was helping the inactives to put together a process and a guide. My question is, if we don't have a way to maintain the actives, how are we going to give something to bring back the inactives? That's kind of been my thought lately. I don't know what you guys think, but my thought is we probably have to help fit it'll kind of come hand in hand. Whatever we figure out to help maintain, we'll also, and then we'll add on if the new.
work on strengthening current neighborhood associations before we start
Yeah.
getting new ones?
So I'm thinking,
So it could be like the inactive kind of as an A underneath the.
Okay.
That's my thought.
All right.
Faith.
Well, I'm thinking this is 2016. And so instead of sending out cards to people, I think we need to start thinking of electronic ways to contact our neighbors, and maybe some cute little, something that, like we had talked last month about having a raffle thing at ours or something. Something to attract the people to come to their community and get to know their neighbors. And if it's bumper sticker type language, you know, something that's catchy, that, and going through the media, using that neighborhood site that's on
Next
the
door.
internet. But yeah, we need to, I don't know, I just think the postcards, I don't think the postcards are, we send out 1,700 postcards and we get 7 people. I mean, it's just, you know, I think one of the things that needs to be on there is that we need to find a way to contact people in this.
Right. That's part of, I think, what we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We can break out that, how do you get more people to a neighborhood association meeting, and have a CIC meeting just on different methods and exploring ways.
Well,
to-
I wondered, like, got this little card with my utility bill.
Mhm.
What's the wait list? How much does it cost to get on that list to send something with the utility bill? Maybe we can use some funds to put something together for that. It
It's
is
still
paper, but you got both.
And in our neighborhood, it pays.
Yeah. I mean, we're not getting hundreds at our association meetings, but the ones that we do get come because they get their paper, so maybe more. But yeah, I agree, we need to hit all avenues, but I'm wondering if this might be another way.
Yeah. Laura,
Can
after
get
saying I'm
repetition.
happy, I'm reading more. What if we took 5 and added it to 2? Identify the benefits and develop resources to maintain active neighborhood associations. And then make that whole thing number 2. And then I would make the real 3, reactivating and
It'd be like
the
2A.
identifying the meetings, et cetera, number 4.
All right, well, this helps us when we create those agenda items to know what to put. We can start to, internally, I do this list of what to put on each agenda item, or sort of the big items in the order. I can share that with you. there's a lot of things that sort of come up, and so things get bumped around, but we can give you a preliminary plan of what we're doing, and hopefully we'll find out more when we hear back from PSU. If not, we'll work on how to come out with a public involvement plan. All right, are you ready to move on to the next one, the presentation topic?
You said you brought some of those brochures that tell when everybody meets.
Yeah.
Because one thing I wanted to do this year was try to visit at least 3 others.
Yeah, remember in our,
It's one of our goals.
that's our goal, is to have everybody attend at least one other meeting.
So they've been updated, and the correct date for Caulfield was put in there. And our website's been updated to reflect this as well. The only thing that's not on the website is it doesn't say the 4th Thursday or Tuesday or whatever it is. So we will add those sentences to our website. But the dates of each of the hearings, the meeting locations, and
The
places.
CIC, I noticed, we don't have September on there because of Labor Day.
That's correct.
But also July, this year, July 4th falls on Monday.
Oh.
All right. I will update that sheet that you have before you to remove July 4th if it's not already. And then also, now that we know our meeting dates, at the bottom of each of the CIC agendas, remember for a while we were attaching the remaining meeting dates for the year, so we can do that again. All right, so the next thing is presentation topics. So our goal is to learn about land use and what's going on in the city. We have had topics on a presentation on various topics thus far, so I'm trying to figure out what other topics you would like presentations on moving forward. So those were the 5 that I just sort of put some in there, and then again got some great suggestions. So the first one is presentations from other jurisdictions and how they support their neighborhood associations. The tough part is that there's not a lot of jurisdictions with CICs or neighborhood associations. I'm going down to the city of Salem to meet with them. They have essentially sort of a CIC neighborhood association in a week or two to see how their structure works and how they help support those 2 groups. I also am in talks with City of Portland. They have an Office of Neighborhood Involvement and different other entities as well. We talked to Corvallis quite a lot. So there's just not a lot of jurisdictions to pull from, but we will do our best to see what we can learn from them. And then City of Salem seemed interested in giving you a presentation about how they work and answering some of your questions as well. I think that it would be a great resource to ask them how they do their noticing for their neighborhood association meetings, things like that. Some of these bigger questions maybe they can help us with. And also while we're going through this public involvement plan, they might provide some insight. Then conversely, or sort of associated with that, is picking active neighborhood associations and other places and talking to them and how do they work and how do they get presenters at their meetings or how do they get the word out. Same sort of thing. Maybe we could learn from what they're doing. Geologic hazards, we talked a little bit about landslides. We have regulations regarding protections of geologic hazards or landslides. And that ranked pretty high on the list of items that we wanted to learn about. Street trees, and then also trees on private property, sort of related.
Can we lump those together? Are they 2 separate?
We could do whatever you would like. They're generally separate topics. They're under different code requirements, and we sort of look at them in very distinctly different ways. Okay. But if you want to have a meeting and just talk about trees the whole time, that actually sounds really exciting to me.
Okay, that's something we can look at down the
road. Then there are also some comments about how to get local activism, disaster response, during incidents, code enforcement process. I think code enforcement process, we do hear a lot of questions when people get into code enforcement. We always have to sort of go through this explanation of why you're in code enforcement and your neighbor's not in it, or maybe they are. So that does seem, from my end, I'm sitting on the other side of the desk, that there is maybe a communication gap on how that works. What else would you like to see presentations on, or do you want to prioritize things differently? The hard part with the priority is the others were written in, so they didn't really get prioritized as well.
The only other thing is maybe regularly scheduling department updates so that, when Mo really doesn't need to go do a dog and pony show on the library, have her in here to do a report that we can take back to our neighborhood associations. And we'd already discussed that it's probably a good idea to have Public Works give us an update on facility, now that John snuck out.
So we can't. So what we've done is sort of in 2015, you saw Public Works at everyone, and then we filled in another department with every meeting as well, so we can set more of a regular schedule. So October is going to be Public Works and whatever other department if you want, or we've sort of left it open to see what was going on. So if there was something going on that was relatively large, that they could fill that slot. If you want us to be a little bit more regulated, and
I don't mind what month it is. I just would it would be nice to have somebody here every month.
Okay.
Okay. And I think
I think that
personally
was
it's
very
nicer to
beneficial.
hear about them when it's small things.
Will do.
Don't put them in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that you've been wondering about the city or how we work or land use or
Joyce has a...
things like that?
Sorry, Joyce.
As this is a political year, and we are the ones that take information to our neighbors, to have something about political signs, the do's and don'ts of where to place them, and when they need to be taken down and what to do with them when you're done with them, but at least so that we can tell our neighbors, no, you can't put that sign out there in the parking strip. It needs to be in your lawn, on the inside of the sidewalk, if you have sidewalks.
And you can have one or two.
And if you put your sign in a place that's not legal, who's going to pick it up, and where you might be able to collect those signs again, because they are expensive. And I know that the police department gets a whole pile of them. At least that's what they used to do, and you could go up and find the signs for your particular candidate and put them in appropriate places. So, just a little lesson on where to put them.
Good education.
Yep. Put them in the right of way. Any other ideas for the non-6 people? Any other presentations? And at any time you can email and we can add.
So I'll keep working with Amy, Karen, and Barbara and sort of refine this a little bit.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Approval of the minutes. Did anyone have anything on the minutes that they noticed? All right. With that, what's the word for the people that are the main people?
For some reason, I'm
Drawing a blank.
So
Primary. Primary? Is that what they're called? Okay.
We were just doing a raise of hands.
The primary or everybody?
Just raise your hand.
All right, everybody.
Good
That
where
way
we
it
are.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, everyone approve? Raise your hand. Any nay?
Nays? Okay.
All right. Any abstaining? Okay.
And whoa, kill the front lights.
Sorry.
I can't see anymore.
Oh,
Okay.
thank
With
you.
that, we are at Neighborhood Roundtable. I'm going to start remembering which way I started. I guess it really doesn't matter, but we'll just start over here with Jessica.
I don't have anything to report except for our steering committee meeting on the 9th.
This month on the 9th.
Yes.
All right, Steve?
I'll defer to Barbara.
Dennis?
Pass.
Wow, Mike?
Nothing.
Mark?
I'm going to defer to Tony.
Nice. Jesse?
Okay. Since I don't have anyone to defer to. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association had their steering committee meeting on December 3rd. I was not there for that. But nothing huge happened. We had a presentation from the Girl Scout troop We talked about notices for elections and continued the discussion about the Livability Conference, which I mentioned last month. There's still nothing to present to the CIC formally as far as an outline or a concept, but it's being worked on. And we had committee reports. This week we do have elections for the steering committee for this year, so if anyone wants to come to that, that's happening. Also, kind of the biggest news with the neighborhood is last month the neighborhood filed a LUBA appeal regarding the Waterboard Park issue that we've talked about here before. And the proposed public works expansion. So that may be resolved sometime the next month to 3 months, probably. That's it.
Okay.
Brian?
Yeah, likewise, I have no one to defer to. We will be having a meeting on the 27th. We've got 2 or 3 small presentations in line already. And I think all the proposed development type stuff and remodeling is all going to be past due by the time the meeting comes around, unless there's a new one that I haven't noticed yet. But so we should have a pretty full meeting.
All right. Gary?
Our next meeting is the 21st of this month. And if anybody's driven up and down South End Road, we'll report that I hope we don't have to take the chainsaws down and cut up those trees that fell over down there. But anyway, we will be having one probably in February or March to clean up, and hopefully we don't have to do that part. The city or this county probably does that, don't they? On that?
Is that a county?
I would assume they would do the big stuff.
The county?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we'll take our yellow bags down there and just
Tie them on the tree.
tie them around.
As much
Yeah, that's all I got.
I'll follow up for you.
Okay, we don't have that much fun.
Karen.
Rivercrest is between meetings also. Only thing, so far Merrillhurst School is proving to be a very quiet neighbor. Those cute little kids I get to watch every day. And a reminder to everybody, that is a school zone, and I will compliment the city. The signs were up before school started this year. So don't forget that Lynn Avenue actually is a school zone in front of Mount Pleasant School again.
And Warner Parrott.
And Warner Parrott. Yes, I'm noticing a lot of forgetful people.
All right. Gaffney Lane, we meet on the 28th. And one thing I was going to ask, for some, just as a reminder, maybe when you send out your postcards, and maybe we can add it to the emails, some of the neighborhood associations, when you show up to go to a meeting, like, especially I remember with Caulfield, it's very hard to find that room if you don't know where you're coming. It's dark at BCT, and so some of these other places that I'm going to be going to for the first time, think about that. You know, we all go to these meetings whenever they are, quarterly. We know exactly where we're going, but somebody for the first time, if they come and it's too hard to find, they might just turn around. So that's something I think we should also keep in mind. And so things have been pretty quiet in Gaffney Lane, other than next door has been really well used during this cold snap, finding pets and helping each other. Mm-hmm. I was very pleased at some of the things that have been going through. Barbara.
Park Place neighborhood has been pretty quiet, except for one lady that's actually, she's in the Park Place neighborhood, she lives in the county, and she's had a lot of flooding, which she believes is resulting from the Ames Street project. So we've tried to put her in contact with Pete, and Debbie Fuller, who is on our steering committee, works for the county, and she's trying to get her in touch with the county person, because she lives in the county, but the water is coming from the city down near Sears Nursery there. You know, it's a big problem. She has a whole apartment downstairs, then all of it's just flooded. So other than that, we'll have our meeting on January 21st at the Alliance Academy. And that's all.
Mm-hmm. Is that a steering committee meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
So Barclay Hill's been pretty quiet. lately. We've had an influx of people asking to join the Nextdoor on the Facebook sites, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then we canceled our last meetings of 2015, so we can actually regroup and start off the meetings for this year, because we plan on doing the bi-monthly, every other month instead of every quarter. So our first meeting is coming up on the 12th, which is next Tuesday. And yeah, I'll keep you guys updated on how that goes.
Great.
That's it.
Faith.
Our meeting is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Living Hope Church on Myers Road. And we're meeting with the Tower Vista.
Tower Vista has been invited, yes.
Because they don't have any, and so hopefully we'll get, the cards went out this time, so hopefully we'll have a lot of people there.
So we're going
Joyce?
to be talking about where our water comes from, and where our water goes when we flush it away. Always good stuff to know, especially where our water's coming from. And clean water. The pickleballers are also going to come and talk about pickleball. So if you're interested in having them come to your meeting and want to pre-hear them, come tomorrow night. We're really easy to find in a very well-lit parking lot. There's lots of parking. You'll be able to see us right out front in the meeting. So we're a friendly group. So come and join us. There is something, though, I did have a question about, that an update on the trees that were cut at Waterboard Park, where a private individual had cut down some trees, and there was, they were talking about a possible lawsuit or something about that. What was the outcome of that? Was the person fined? I'm just interested to know, because it was something mentioned here, was it last month or the month before? Just as a follow-up, because those are important things that are going on. And by the way, the landslides, the apartments, those are in Hillendale neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
They're our neighbors, but they're also yours.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So trees, do we know anything?
We'll come back with an update.
Thank you.
So that's
Yeah, I haven't heard anything back.
yeah, we did. All right. City business. Brian? No? Tony? Laura?
We're tired.
Amen. We really appreciate all the work.
Well,
Oh,
going through this,
there's John. What was the question? That was.
No, it's not for John.
Oh, there was a question before that.
No, I was
Stormwater. I'll send an email
Oh, okay.
regarding the stormwater, and we can.
All right. Well, then, with that, unless anybody has anything else, we will adjourn at 8:25.